From Bias to Equality podcast is brought to you by the CEO Magazine, Holman Webb Lawyers, and B2Buy.
Hello, and welcome to my podcast From Bias to Equality. I'm your host, Sandra D'Souza. Thank you for joining us. Today, we are going to have a conversation with Allan and Tess Julian from Hargraves Institute as part of our Expertise series. Allan, founder and executive director of Hargraves Institute, is a renowned thought leader and innovation expert with over 25 years of experience. He specializes in helping organizations unlock their full potential through innovation, offering insights, idea generation, and implementation expertise. Allan's dedication to fostering collaboration and his industry-specific knowledge have made him a sought-after figure in the field. His guidance empowers organizations to achieve unparalleled growth, enhance performance, and increase shareholder value. Now, Tess, she's amazing, I think, because she has devoted her professional life to empowering individuals in the workplace, focusing on the development of essential skills. Throughout her extensive career, Tess has personally encountered and surmounted numerous obstacles faced by women across various organizational settings. As an employee, leader, business partner, and founder, she has firsthand experience in navigating the challenges and breaking down barriers. A little bit about Hargraves. The Hargraves Institute was founded in 2006 by 12 leading organizations seeking to create a collaborative forum and source of knowledge for innovation. When forming Hargraves, the founding members and their executive director, Allan, took inspiration from one of Australia's most accomplished inventors named Lawrence Hargraves. Renowned for creating the box kite in 1893, Hargraves refused to patent his inventions, instead allowing them to benefit anybody who wished to use them. Consequently, this willingness to share his ideas openly enabled others to achieve crewed flight. This principle of sharing and collaboration to advance knowledge is the cornerstone of Hargraves Institute. Hi, Allan and Tess. Thank you so much for joining us here on the podcast today.
Thank you for having us.
Now, I know this time I've got both of you on the here joining me in the interview. Normally I do a one-on-one, but I'll try and direct the questions to each one of you. So I'm going to start off with Allan. Allan, I want to know, what would you like to add to your bio?
Well, thank you, Sandra. What I'd like to add is that my original training was a mechanical engineer, which means I love to know and understand how things work. And what my passion is, and what I've been doing now for a long time, is helping organizations make change happen and executing strategy. I just love getting things done and delivered and seeing the outcome. So that's the sort of passion behind what I do every day.
Well, that's wonderful. I wasn't expecting you to talk about that, but that certainly gives an insight into the way that you think and the passion that you have, which I can really hear that through. And so what about you, Tess? What else would you like to add to your bio?
Well, I think the thing that I have always done is be an educator, a facilitator, a trainer. That's what I love doing, and I love working with groups of women, but I also love working with groups of anyone, really. And seeing we are very fortunate because we work with people who want to learn how to innovate. They want to learn how to be better, and so it's sort of a joyful occupation, really.
Well, that's a nice way to put it. I guess helping you to live your purpose. Okay, so Tess, I'm going to ask you this next question, and you can be as honest as you want to. If there's a backstory, or how did you both start working together?
Well, I had done a lot of work in the vocational education and training system around innovation and innovation skills. And I had my own company. And at a certain point, I decided I wanted to grow and go and work with other people for a while. So I disbanded my company and I met up with Allan, who was at that time the godfather of innovation. And so we started.
Was he scary at the time? Sorry, I can't help but say
never
that.
Scary, never scary. The guru, perhaps. Anyway, we started to work together around innovation, collaboration, all things that, I enjoy doing. And then, of course, innovation's good for women. Women are good for innovation. So the diversity aspect of innovation came about, maybe 6-7 years ago. And so we started working on a program specifically for women, but it also, my philosophy is that if you make it right for women, who are 51% of the population, you go a long way to making it right for everyone. Not completely, but, so it is really about inclusion and diversity for everybody at work.
Which is fantastic because basically what you're saying is that it's not about changing women, it's about empowering women and through innovation and
exactly the program. Because it's based on innovation and change and collaboration, we spend time in the Women at Work program on how to make change happen. And then we focus on how to make change happen to remove the barriers for people at work to make it a more inclusive workplace. So it is very much about making change to the workplace, not making change to the people or the women.
That's great. That's great. So I guess, I want to the next question. I actually think that Allan and you and Tess would have different answers to that, but I'll start off with Allan. I guess in your work, what are the usual problems that you've seen with companies that when they face when they want more women in leadership roles?
Sandra, so the common problem is bias around, they just can't see the problem. Business is good, we're doing well, why do we need to change? I'm happy doing it, I'm happy. If I'm a leader, I've had a career for 10 or 20 or 30, 40 years, why be different, why change? And I think the drama is that the world is now becoming much more volatile, much more uncertain, and therefore organizations have to have much more ability to change. And by having the capability to innovate, they can then therefore change. And so the challenge is they don't see it, and because they don't see it, they don't promote women. But the challenge is that because they don't see it, they're also missing the big opportunities to keep up with change. So this is about leadership driving it, and they're sort of like they're stuck, and they need to see that they need to make a change. So I think the hard part is the bias that they just can't see it. And they really need to have a kickstart that says, in order for us to be more capable of change, to solve complex problems, we need more diverse thinking in our leadership teams. We need to promote diversity in order to do that, but there has to be a kickstart, and it's just getting that kickstart that's the problem.
And I think it's really interesting that how you see that innovation diversity goes hand in hand. And Tess, I guess from your perspective, what are the usual problems that you see when companies face wanting to have more women in leadership roles?
Well, the major one is attracting women, especially in the STEM areas. Finding women who are qualified, who are prepared to apply for jobs, and in that case, you really have to help them look at their whole recruitment process and how they've structured it. But then the next thing is retaining. How do you keep people? How do you make the workplace a place where women want to be? And then the next thing is, how do you get women promoted into leadership positions? So there are sort of those three things that people recognise are problems, but they don't necessarily recognise what they need to do to address the problems.
And it sounds really, really challenging. And I guess it is challenging. Otherwise, we wouldn't be struggling so much and trying to recruit more women. And like you said, it's a complex issue. What do you like? When companies want to talk to you guys, like wanting some help, and at least they're aware of the problems. Do you have a starting point, like where you like how you address that? And I can, I'll start off with Tess from your perspective.
All right, because when you say, the thing is, people will say, yes, we've got a problem. But because, as you say, Sandra, the solution's very complex. And in some ways, it means actually rethinking and reframing your thinking about how you do everything at work.
Yeah.
What you find is that employers go, whoa, I think I want to go down that track. That sounds hard. And they'll opt for a quick fix. And well, that's often let's just do a women's program, or let's do a session on something and fix it. And then we've ticked the box, and obviously that doesn't work because it is quite a complex process. So
and it's just not one off, is it, Tess? You can't just say just do a program and that solves everything.
Well, I quote Gary Hamel here. I like this quote. He says, genuine transformation in companies is rare because few leaders are capable of, 1, imagining radically different future states, 2, approaching change systematically rather than looking for a silver bullet, and 3, persevering over the 3 to 4 years it takes to make deep change irreversible. And that's certainly been my experience. However, we have had examples of companies that have done that and have reaped the benefits of that perseverance and grit.
No, that's good to know. I mean, well, no, it means that it's possible, and
it is possible, absolutely.
And if you're committed to it. And so, Allan, I'm going to point this question to you. I guess with you would have come across, I guess, in helping companies, part of the company people resisting change. They don't want the changes. And I imagine, and can I hazard to guess, it could be coming more from existing leadership, mainly men. I mean, maybe tell me if I'm kind of like, generalizing or stereotyping. I'm happy to be corrected, but I would love to hear from your experience when it comes to change and you see resistance. How does that look like, and what do you do?
Well, it's obvious that the leadership at the moment is mostly male, which is why there's a problem. And it's becoming more and more obvious that there's external pressures on companies from shareholders and from customers to say we want to see a more diverse company. And there's ESG reporting, and there's a whole bunch of things going on for board level reporting to say that shareholders want to see more diversity because they know that it's good for business. Then you have the challenge that people see it and then they say, well, we've got to do something about it. And sometimes they don't. And I don't find that, let me start again. It's more around most boards and executive teams are incredibly busy. We've got a recession coming. We've got inflation. We've got unsteady environments with Ukraine and China. We've got AI. There are so many things on their menu of jobs to be done that when they then look at gender and look at diversity, somehow it falls down the list way below things like cybersecurity and cost cutting. And so I think if there's not a resistance to change, there's much more around we're so darn busy doing things that seem to be more important that we don't get around to it, is the first example. The terrible thing about that is that if they did get around to it, and if they did improve their diversity, they'd have much better outcomes to solve those other problems as well. But it's just a busy thing. So we don't see a proactive resistance to change to say we're going to stop diversity improving. What we see is we're just so darn busy doing so many other things that we just don't get around to it. It doesn't get on. We know we want to, but we just don't get there.
And I guess it's not seen as top priority.
Yeah, that's it. It's not my immediate emergency happening around what I need to focus on today. And it's also when the big opportunities come, like a senior leader leaves and there is an opportunity to promote someone or recruit from outside or recruit a mid-level manager for the future. Normally people are so darn busy that they're just trying to find someone, anyone, and get the right person, etc., that they don't miss the opportunity to say, well, this particular time we're going to go the extra yard and make sure we hire for some diversity and just and look a little bit harder as compared to, I just need to get a position filled. So I think urgency and busyness are the enemies of changing diversity.
And so when you do see companies who seek out for help, coming to you for help, and then you see, it's not, some of the leaders are not seeing it as top priority, or, there's always fires to put out. There's no sense of urgency around the issue. What do you tell them? What do you say, like, how important this is? Or does it need to come from the CEO to say, the CEO says, this must be it. This is the only, this, we have to put focus on this. Like, how do you like, what is it that you've seen in your experience that sort of shift that mentality?
So it's exactly like Tess said about how hard it is for leaders to deliver change. We look for a champion. We look in an organisation and say, is there a champion that is going to fight this battle for the next year or 2 or 3 or 4 and continually fight the battle and always raise it at the right time and always put the pressure on it? And so that it doesn't have to be the CEO. It has to be obviously somebody with influence. But every time an organisation that we've dealt with has been successful at changing, it's come from a champion around a champion of change. And that's the absolute secret. And it's that top, and they have to be a person of influence. And that's the secret of actually making it happen.
It's that champion. So that's the secret sauce.
Well, I think it's a secret sauce, and it's a secret sauce around many things, because when things are busy, who speaks up for more diversity? When they start cost cutting, who speaks up? Right? You need that champion that says, we need to continue our diversity programs even though we're cutting costs. You need that champion. And then once the champion then achieves more diversity and we have more women in more senior roles, then you get a community approach and there's a lot more diversity happening. So that, and then you start a roller coaster and then they just grow and grow and grow. But in the early days, it's identifying a champion with a true passion.
But also, I mean, my observation is you need a CEO and an executive team that's very open to it as well. Yeah. And the research suggests that CEOs and executive teams are often very open to it. But as, Allan described, it's the day-to-day business that interferes. So having a champion there who can translate, articulate, remind the executive team is a great way to overcome that problem. And if you have a resistant, go on, sorry.
No, I was going to say, can the champion be somebody from the board, or does it have to be peer level, or the next,
well, as Allan said, it does need to be someone with influence, usually someone who's on the executive team.
Okay.
Who has
the board is fine.
Who has enough influence and is heard, but also can get the support within the organisation as well.
Okay. I mean, I asked that because you said, just even if you have the executive team that's open, by having a champion from the board will help give them that reinforcement of support, which will cascade down, I guess, or that they know that there are competing priorities, but the board backs them, then they're okay, in a way.
Well, that's right. And you do need the top down and bottom up. So you do need to have your diversity, like a mechanism within the organisation, a diversity committee or a alumni association or something that actually keeps things happening and because you do need that movement underneath as a part of the staff, the employees as well. Can't all be top down. So, but I guess that's where the champion sort of the advocate is the broker between those two, between the board and the executive team and the movement.
And I have to add in here to support Tess, and it's not about changing the women, and it's not about skills for the women. It's about changing the systems of the business. It's about changing how the business thinks. It's changing how the business works. It's changing how the leadership and the board report. That's how you actually start a change to actually improve diversity. And then you move on to hiring the right women and developing them and doing a whole bunch of things. But it's the secret is it's a system issue. It's a business issue. It's a leadership issue. It's not a women's issue.
That's really important. I think that's an important point that you're both making, because I think historically, and I'm talking about 10 years ago, maybe 10 or 20, that it would be how to teach women to be more assertive, how to encourage them to speak up, how to almost adopt the masculine behavior in an organization to fit into the culture in order to progress. And what we're talking about is not that. And that's a really important point to make, because women don't need fixing. And what we're saying here is really helping the company's culture, the leadership team, the various employee groups, and the culture to make it an environment that is conducive for diversity, inclusivity, and help drive that profitability, innovation, and performance.
And if you do change systems and practices, which is what you need to do to really, it has to be applicable to all employees, not just women. Like it has to be something that actually changes the whole workplace, not just working conditions for women or for a particular group. But the women and other groups need to be heard to understand how to make that change work for them, as well as, everyone. So, yeah.
And
That's
can I
good.
add,
And so, yep, go on.
so need to be heard. So it's very, very simple in terms of meetings happen every day. And in senior leadership teams right now, there is a majority of males in the meeting, because that's just the facts of the statistics. It is the male's responsibility and the leader's responsibility to make sure that everybody is heard in that meeting, and to make sure that not only that if the women in the room are heard, is that everybody is heard in a meeting. And that changes the inclusivity, psychological safety of meetings. And that's one of the core points of change, is amplifying the fact that you're listening to everybody, and you're making sure that everybody speaks in meetings, and everyone is speaking equally. As Tess said, it's not about being more equal to women or different. It's everybody has an equal chance. And that's the role of the leader or the person running meetings, to ensure that in meetings, everybody is heard equally. Everyone has the opportunity to speak. And that will absolutely change the outcomes of your meetings in terms of better quality of decision making and better performance, by simply ensuring that everyone at a meeting is heard.
And that sounds really basic and fundamental, but I guess that's not the case when it's not inclusive, because not everybody gets heard. And as we know, unless we make the effort, unless the culture makes the effort to be that inclusive. And so I guess in your experience, having seen the transition and change with companies that you've worked with, what are the type of results that you've seen when they bring in diversity into the company, into the leadership team?
We see better decision making. We see faster decision making. We see better attraction and retention of talent. Because if you're known as an organisation, it's a great place to work for women, then more women want to work there, which means it improves the quality of the talent that you have. At the end of the day, the scorecard of outcomes is that you'll have a more successful company. You will make more money in the crudest of terms if you have a more diverse decision-making process at the senior levels. Is key, because we know a lot of organisations can have an awful lot of women at lower levels within the organisation. The challenge is having that diversity equal all the way up through the organisation from the bottom to the top, and improving the thinking power, diversity, problem solving, risk analytics at every level in the organisation just makes a more successful organisation.
And I think there's a lot of evidence, to support that. You can find lots and lots of evidence that you get better decision making, better business, more creativity, more innovation. But the thing that I would also add is that if you have women in leadership positions, and people from other groups, you have safer workplaces, healthier workplaces, better workplaces, because I think that's true, because it breaks down those sort of cultural elements that can be very difficult for women in negotiating their day-to-day work.
Yes, that's an interesting point, because I was going to point out, Tess, what you just said after what Allan has said, is that research, lots of research, like, have shown the benefits of having more diverse team and how it actually helps improve business performance. And you and Allan are talking the real examples that you've seen firsthand, the change and what that means. But I do take the point that you make, which we tend to overlook, but that safety, whether it's workplace psychological safety as well, and that's
But also
important.
physical safety. I mean, I think
Yeah.
there is some. I think I was reading an article about it. And if you look at political parties, I think there is some evidence that because when you have more women in positions in a political party, it's safer for all women.
Yeah.
And that's one of the big reasons. And I think that I did read that as well. There's research that shows that's true in organisations as well.
And that's important because you want to feel safe at work.
Absolutely.
And that's how you also can perform better, because you're performing, obviously when you work in V, you don't perform that well. And I know I'm pointing out the obvious, but it's a factor that not everybody thinks about, but it is an important factor.
Well, things like women's specific health issues. I mean, women have health issues that men don't have. And if you have women in leadership positions, they can sort of accommodate those and be sensitive to them. So, I mean, that's just a small example, but I think that's important.
That's great. I'm going to ask you a strange question. Just because I know we talk about gender balance, but besides having more women, what does a really inclusive leadership team look like to you?
I've got the answer to this one. An
Okay.
inclusive leadership team should represent proportionately the employees in a company. So you should have the same percentage of women on the leadership team as you have as employees, the same percentage of, the same percentage of minority groups, cultural groups. Of course, that is your ideal, but in order for that to actually work, you have to make sure that you have good representation of different groups across the whole organisation. But I mean, ideally, you're looking. I mean, if you're looking at a mining company, I suppose. Yeah, but
that's actually, I like that, because that is also what we want in, changing it to when we were talking about the politicians. That's what we want in Parliament, isn't it? When we elect
absolutely
politicians to represent the constituents, you want, yes, it's one person, but the whole makeup of the elected official is to represent the diversity of the country,
of the community. That's exactly right. And organisations should represent the diversity of the community, and then the leadership team should represent the diversity of their organisation. That's, really.
Yeah. Allan, did you want to add? Yes.
I want to add that if you have a truly diverse organisation, when I see them, and we've had the pleasure of working with them, they have much more robust conversations. They have much more robust meetings. They hear everybody's voice. They have contradictory voices. You can see them struggling a little bit, and they make better decisions because they're listening to everybody. There's not groupthink, right? Groupthink doesn't happen when you have diverse organisations and people who have the safety to speak up. And so when you watch, you can see the better meetings. And a better meeting isn't everyone agreeing with each other. A better meeting is making a better outcome, and everybody sharing their knowledge equally, because diversity improves knowledge sharing, so that everybody has the opportunity to contribute and also learn. And so I think that's absolutely key. So I love it. I know meetings where I've been there and I think, wow, these people are really discussing something in a sort of nearly in a heated way, but they get a way better outcome. And as they leave the meeting, they're best of friends, and it's about solving problems. Business is about solving problems, and you solve problems better when you have a diverse group in the meeting. Now what that also means, though, that not every in exec teams, you may not be able to have a totally diverse executive team because of the time it takes to recruit and develop people. You have to have the diversity in the room when the decision's being made. So you have to learn potentially to have people who might not be at the same level, but get them into the room so that they are there when the decision's being made. I heard a wonderful story today of a consultant who was interviewing one of the for a whole new business in India, and they were interviewing a senior leadership team and one-on-one, and they asked that at every interview that they had a junior person come along for the interview. So they interviewed the senior person and a junior person at the same time, because a lot of times there's a disconnect between the senior people and the people actually running the business. So the senior people don't really know how the business is being run every day. And so there's a huge benefit of having that diversity in the room so that people know what's actually happening on the ground, rather than just because I'm the boss, I assume that I know what's happening on the front line. You don't. You have to bring different people into the room so that you actually do know what's happening. And that's
so was a junior person part of the recruitment panel? Did they ask the questions, or was that the point?
This was a consultant interviewing a whole leadership team around a change program, and they really wanted to understand the business. And they said, if you just interviewed the leadership team, you'll get the leadership team's view, and they don't really understand the business.
So they only bring one junior person in, or did they have a little sort of? Sorry, we can have this conversation later.
Let's go. I'm happy for you to continue this.
This is a valuable tool.
It is good. I'm intrigued.
They brought one junior person in for each senior leader that they interviewed, so that when they did an interview, so if they're doing an interview one-on-one with a senior leader.
Oh, they were one-on-ones. Okay.
Yeah, sorry, they were one-on-ones, which actually meant they were one-on-twos. There was the consultant, the senior leader, and
so they'd ask.
person.
So they'd say, Alan, what do you think? And then Susie, what do you think?
What do you think? Right? What do you reckon? And sometimes they would then have watch a lovely conversation between the senior and junior person, saying, "Well, this is what's really happening. How do you know? Yes, it is. No, it's not." So that's the other reason why diversity is sometimes hard. In the original question, Sandra, is that sometimes the senior leadership is a bit disconnected in large organisations from the front line, from what's actually happening in the offices. Yes, because they're so busy and there are so many layers of management. And so therefore the diversity is to actually get them connected to the organisation better.
And you know, Alan, you've brought a lot of flashback memories for me, because I remember one particular role I was in, and I was a pretty young in a person in the management team, but it wasn't that long ago. I guess I was junior. And so when the management team were making decisions or discussion, because I still wasn't that long ago being part of that, how the day-to-day business was running, they would make decisions or they would say something and I would correct them. And I would say, actually, no, this is what they were happening. And you could see the disconnect. And I didn't realize, I guess I felt that at least I gave them the right information so that they could make a better decision at the time. And I was able to do that because I was a junior person not that long before I made it to the or were recruited to the management team. So I certainly saw the value of that in that experience. And now when you just brought this up, it's just like, oh yes, of course, light bulb moment. It is important, because there are disconnect. You just get so used to being in the management, the various activities and decision making you have to do at one end of the business, that you do forget what are the various issues that you may not have considered. It's natural.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Do you know we could keep talking forever, but I do have a couple of questions left to ask both of you. I think this is one I'm hesitant to ask, but I would like to know what you both think. Are there any wrong ideas about women in leadership that you want to clear up?
What I see very often in my training programs is somebody who'll say, well, that's all very well, but the worst manager I've ever had was a woman. And I've thought about it long and hard, and it occurs to me that we judge women very harshly and more harshly. We notice them because they're less obvious, because there are fewer of them. So you notice them, you judge them more harshly, and in a way that is sort of discriminatory, because we expect more of women than we expect of men. So and so I say, well, of course, there are as many bad women managers as there are male managers. It's that happens. But if there is any part of any advice I give is don't just lift yourself up, lift everybody up, amplify everybody. Your role is to make to lift people if you're going to become a leader or a manager. So, I think that's one of the things that I have observed, that we are much harsher on women when they fail, or when they make a mistake, or when they're not so good.
I agree. I agree with you. Do you know, Tess, I was also just thinking about that recently because of a comment, and I was also thinking about it just this morning. I was talking to somebody, and he said, because there is obviously a greater push and a lot of discussion about having more women leaders, and it's part of the work that what I'm doing. And he mentioned that it's becoming problematic because women are being promoted when they're not ready, and so they fail in those roles. And it got me thinking: am I doing a bad thing? Is this wrong to try and push this, doing what I'm doing? But then it got me thinking: is that how many male managers do we know who were promoted and were not ready? And the reason,
absolutely.
Yeah, and the reason why there is more notice on the women is because it is, women do get judged harshly. That it's every mistake, and I remember that also in my corporate career. Every mistake you make, everyone notice. But if it's and I don't want to make this as about gender issue. And Allan, I'm happy for you to say, share your opinion. But it is always more forgiving when a guy makes a mistake compared to a woman makes a mistake, and that's my observation as well.
Because there are a lot more of them making mistakes, so you don't notice. Like partly, but that's right. Really, how many men have been promoted who were not up to who weren't ready?
Yeah.
And
I'd like to add, that doesn't wash with me.
No, but it got me thinking, and I think that's where I've come down to the same conclusion as you. Is that, and Allan, I'll come back to you, but it's just there is so much more visibility every time a woman, and it's not men judging women harshly. Women also judge women harshly. It's from both. Yeah. So it is challenging being a woman in leadership roles for any women.
And also, I'll just say one other thing, that the way we define merit, the way we define jobs, are very much based around the traditional male leadership, which may or may not be appropriate for the situation that they are in. So, because, and that's one of the complicating factors, is sometimes you have to redesign jobs because increasing, the work is changing, the challenges are changing, so we need a different suite of skills, and that makes it probably more difficult for men who are used to being promoted against the criteria that they've all been trained to excel at. Yes. And women haven't.
Yes, and I can really have a whole another interview hour with you on that. But I actually want to hear Allan's feedback on this question. So, Allan, you was going to add before I rudely interrupted you?
No, that's fine. But you're saying what are there any wrong ideas? There are hundreds and hundreds of wrong ideas about the gender issue, and it really boils down to, as Tess highlighted, the world has changed. The world of work has changed. We've gone through a period of pre-COVID, then COVID, then post-COVID. We've now in the world of flexible working. We're in the world of AI. We're in the world of, it's called activity avalanche, where people have got so much to do they can't breathe. There's shortages of talented staff. There's inflation. The world has changed. And so what we knew was the right thing potentially yesterday or before may not be right now. And leaders who have been leading their organizations for 10 or 20 years have only been leading post-COVID for a year or so. So it's a case is that we have to learn to change with it. And a lot of the data and a lot of the experiences are very valid today as they were before, but a lot of them are very different. Gender balance in a diverse, flexible workplace is even harder because people are not in the office as much and have competing roles. And so we have to recognize that it is a tough environment and people have not navigated the future of work very well. And it is still being solved. And we've also got things like purpose now. We've got sustainability. We've got a whole bunch of competing things that leaders have to look at. That it is just an amazingly busy, volatile, uncertain, all those sorts of words world that we have to navigate. And we still have to deliver growth. And we have to deliver shareholder value. And we have to count success in dollars. And we have to write a report to the stock exchange if we're a public company saying what we've done both financially and for our environment, social and governance, ESG. So it is just an incredibly topsy-turvy world. And I just got to come back to it. The companies that are successful are the companies that have diversity of thought and can see through these problems by seeing all the different viewpoints. And they are the companies that are going to be successful because diversity gives you better decision-making.
That's a very good point. Okay, last question. And this is what I asked to everybody that I interview. And then we might have to make it short because we're almost up in time. So what advice would you give to companies that are just starting their journey toward building a more diverse and inclusive leadership team? I'll start off with Tess and then Allan can finish on that.
Well, I'm going to pick up Allan's idea. Find the champion, get the executive team and board on board, and focus on empowering women to be the agents of change.
I love that. That's actually very good. You could write a whole blog on that one too. Thanks, Tess. Sorry. Allan, Tess said that she took your ideas. Would you like to add to that?
Well, I'll take Tess's ideas. No, I won't. It still boils down to numbers. It still boils down to looking at your leadership team and how many people are there and how many should be women and when are people retiring and leaving and you're going to replace them, and then the team underneath that, and do you have the quality of middle managers that you can promote up to be senior managers, and how are you going to hire women? And I'm not a believer in ratios and things like that, yet I am, because it says, there's lots of excuses why you're going to hire another man, lots of reasons why you hire another man. But if you're chasing the numbers, and if you're saying that we are going to start, then you've got to say we are going to hire ourselves a new CFO and she's going to be a woman. We are going to hire ourselves a new chairman of the board, or get a new chairman of the board, sorry, and we are going to get a woman. And they make that decisions. And so it's not about ratios, and it is about ratios. It's not about counting the numbers, and it is about counting the numbers. You've just got to start doing it in terms of saying we are going to make the effort to go that extra yard and hire the right woman for the right role. And yes, she's going to be a she.
I think that's very, very good advice. Talking about women, did you say women's going to be cheap?
No,
a she.
She. I said she.
Oh, okay.
Just
I'm going to clarify that. Yes, very good. I was being funny at the end. Anyway, on that note, thank you so much both for your time. And I can actually keep asking you many questions because I think what you've shared with us is really very practical advice, approaches, solutions to how we can solve this, and that you have both seen, in firsthand changes and the success of those change for companies. So thank you for sharing all of that with us, and thank you for being part of this podcast.
Thank you for inviting us to talk to you.
And thank you, Sandra.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Today's episode is brought to you by our wonderful sponsors. Firstly, we're sponsored by B2Buy. B2Buy is your trusted business buying platform that simplifies and automates your buying process, helping you buy smarter and faster, giving you greater visibility and value. With 100,000 products in one place, B2Buy is passionate about connecting diverse suppliers with corporate buyers, so you can create a more inclusive business environment and buy better with www.b2buy.online. Our second sponsor is Holman Webb Lawyers, an award-winning and dynamic full-service Australian law firm with offices in Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, and Adelaide. Not only do Holman Webb offer comprehensive legal services, but they are also a proud recipient of the LX Star, recognizing their commitment to achieving gender equality in leadership. Discover more about their services, initiatives and industry-leading insights at www.holmanwebb.com.au. Lastly, our sponsor, the CEO Magazine, is an iconic, global media brand that inspires and promotes excellence within the business world. It is a source of information, inspiration and motivation for the world's most successful leaders, executives, investors and entrepreneurs. Go to www.thesiomagazine.com.